In combat, the enemy is in front of you. At home, he's not. I had just returned from deployment to find my daughter poisoned, and every clue pointed to the wife I'd always loved. They think a soldier only knows guns, but they forgot. A Navy SEAL is trained to turn any place into his battlefield, including his own home. My name is Sterling Prescott. In my world, the world of a Navy SEAL, everything comes down to controlling chaos. It's what I do. Separate the signal from the noise. Find the pattern in seemingly random events, and impose my will on a situation spiraling out of control. I do that out there, so I don't have to do it back here. Home is the one place where peace is supposed to hold. The San Diego heat hit me the moment I stepped off the plane, officially ending a 6-month deployment on the other side of the world. Gideon, the teammate I'd been through hell and back with, gave my shoulder a solid clap. "Welcome home, brother." "Yeah, home," I replied, pulling the strap of my duffel bag tighter. The entire past 6 months had been focused on a single objective: getting back to my wife Lorelei and our daughter Alara. I still remember the day Alara was born. My hands, calloused and familiar with the cold feel of steel, felt impossibly clumsy. Holding her, she was just a warm bundle with tiny, grasping fingers. I looked over at Lorelei, exhausted but radiant. She smiled, her voice hoarse with fatigue. "Look, Sterling, our daughter." In that instant, all the noise of the world outside went silent. That was my anchor, the peace I fought to come home to. We got into Gideon's truck. I pulled my phone from my pocket and powered it on. The screen lit up, and my heart skipped a beat. 12 missed calls, all from Lorelei. She never did that. Even when we argued, she'd call twice, max. A cold sense of unease began to seep into my chest, cutting through the sweltering heat. Before I could call back, the phone buzzed. It wasn't Lorelei. It was a military line. "Master Chief Prescott?" The voice on the other end was a stranger, terrifyingly calm. "Speaking. This is Balboa Naval Hospital. Your daughter, Alara Prescott, has been admitted to the emergency room." The world shrank to the sound of that flat voice on the phone. A low hum filled my ears. "What's her condition?" I asked, surprised that my own voice was steady. "Years of training. Keep a level head. Always. She's unconscious but stable. Police Chief Beckett has requested your immediate presence." "Roger that." I hung up. The temperature in the truck seemed to drop. For a moment, all the stress control training took over. Analyze the situation. Identify the threat. Plan the response. But this wasn't a drill. This was Alara. "My daughter." Gideon glanced at me. He didn't ask questions. He just started the engine and hit the gas. The truck lurched forward, leaving the airport behind. The familiar sights of Coronado blurred past the window, but I saw none of them. My mind was racing. Unconscious. Hospital. Police chief. 3 pieces that didn't fit. Where was Lorelei? Why wasn't she the one who called me? The joy of homecoming had evaporated, replaced by a block of ice in my chest. My mission in the Middle East might have been over, but I had a feeling my real mission was just beginning. Balboa Naval Hospital didn't smell like a war zone. It smelled of antiseptic and quiet fear. A different kind of chaos. More orderly and sterile, but no less deadly. We found Lorelei in the emergency room waiting area. The moment she saw me, she launched herself into my arms, burying her face in my chest and sobbing. I held her on reflex, but my body was rigid. Her perfume was too strong. Her hair was perfectly styled. "Oh, Sterling, thank God you're home," she cried. They attacked her. At Sunset Cliffs Park. They took her necklace. I gently pushed her back, holding her by the shoulders. Lorelei, look at me. Tell me exactly what happened. Her tears were profuse, but her eyes weren't. They darted back and forth, as if trying to recall a memorized script. She went for a walk, and some man, he must have hit her. I found her there. Sterling. Police Chief Beckett's voice cut through the drama. He was a large man with a permanently weary face. Next to him was a naval doctor with a name tag that read, CDR Evans. Beckett gave Gideon a nod, then turned to me. I'm sorry about Alara. We're doing everything we can. I nodded. What's your intel, Beckett? Dr. Evans spoke, his voice as flat as a report. Master Chief Prescott, your daughter's injuries are unusual. The contusions don't show signs of a struggle. No defensive scratches. Furthermore, he stopped, glancing quickly at Lorelei. We found a high concentration of zolpidem in her system. It's a powerful prescription sedative. Zolpidem, the name was a switch flipping in my head. A prescription sedative. Not something a mugger in a park would use. The pieces started arranging themselves in my mind. 12 frantic missed calls. Lorelei's flawless appearance. A story full of holes. And now, irrefutable medical evidence. This wasn't a random attack. This was staged. Can I see her? I asked, my voice ice. Dr. Evans nodded. She's in observation room 3. Still unconscious. I kept my face a blank mask. I turned to Lorelei, softening my voice. Lorelei, you've been here too long. You look exhausted. I put a hand on her shoulder. Go home. Get some rest. I'll stay with her. The second she wakes up, I'll call you. I promise. Relief flashed across her face before being masked by hesitation. But I want to stay. It's okay. I cut her off, my tone firm but concerned. I need you to be rested. Go. She nodded, giving me a quick peck on the cheek. Beckett motioned to one of his officers. Get Mrs. Prescott home safely. Dr. Evans led me to the observation room. It was stark white and cold. Ilara lay there, motionless amid a tangle of wires and beeping machines. Her face was pale, a dark bruise stark against her cheekbone. Rage coiled inside me. Not hot and loud, but cold and sharp as a blade. Whoever did this was going to pay. On the bedside table was a sealed bag with her personal effects. Clothes, her wallet, and her phone. Gideon stood at the door and gave a subtle signal. Clear. I opened the bag and took out the phone. The screen came to life. No password. I scrolled through recent messages. Nothing unusual. Until I saw a chat with her best friend. The last text, sent in the afternoon. Before everything happened. Mom's making me see Mr. Vaughn again. I don't want to. She says it's the last time. Vaughn, a name, a starting point. In my head, the gears began to turn. The mission had a target. I walked out of the room, the cold air conditioning seeming to sharpen my focus. Gideon was waiting down the hall, leaning against a wall. He didn't ask questions, he just watched me. He knew. We found a deserted corner of the hospital parking garage, under a flickering fluorescent light. I showed him the phone screen. A name, Vaughn. Gideon nodded, his face hardening in the shadows. Understood. I need everything on this guy, I said, my voice flat. As soon as possible. Who he is, what he does, where he is, and why my daughter is texting about him. But Gideon, I looked him dead in the eye. We do this by the book. Everything. This was a chess game, and my daughter was on the board. I wouldn't make a single mistake. Illegally obtained evidence would be useless. It could even be used against us. OSINT first, Gideon said, almost to himself. See what his public footprint looks like. We found a quiet corner in the hospital's 24/7 coffee shop. Gideon opened his specialized laptop. He wasn't like a hacker in the movies, typing furiously. He worked methodically, silently, efficiently. Command windows opened and closed. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. My anger wasn't a fire. It was an engine. Cold, efficient. And now, it had fuel. Half an hour later, Gideon had the first results. Vaughn Ashford. A few social media profiles, but they're too clean. Look like a hastily created cover. A few generic photos. No close friends. No history of activity. A ghost. That was more suspicious than a criminal record. What about financials? I asked. Lorelei. I gave Gideon access to our joint accounts. He started tracing. His eyes scanned the spreadsheets, looking for anomalies, for the faint signal in the noise of transactions. Hours later, as dawn began to break outside the window, Gideon pointed to the screen. Got it. A monthly payment. Regular as clockwork for the past 4 months. The amount wasn't large enough to raise flags, but it was enough to sustain something. It wasn't going to an individual, but to a generically named LLC. Pacific Holdings Group, a shell company, I said. Exactly, Gideon replied. A layer of insulation. Let's see where it leads. Another 20 minutes of silence, broken only by the click of keys. Gideon was following the digital breadcrumbs that amateurs like Lorelei and Vaughn thought they had covered. Then he stopped. He turned the screen toward me. On it was an address. A high-end condo building on the coast in La Jolla. Pacific Holdings Group was the lessee of apartment 3B, La Jolla, a world away from our military housing. I stared at the address. We had a suspect, a location, a money trail. We had a working theory of what had happened, but a theory wasn't proof. We need eyes on the ground, I said. Gideon nodded. Recon. That's right. A reconnaissance mission. Off the books. We didn't go to La Jolla immediately. That's what amateurs do. Instead, we went back to Gideon's apartment. He pulled up satellite maps and architectural blueprints of the luxury condo building. Here, he said, pointing to a small cafe on the opposite street corner. Observation Post Alpha. Clear view of the main entrance and part of the garage. He moved the cursor. End of lice. Of lash. R. And here, a rear service alley. Egress Bravo. We spent an hour planning. Identifying entry and exit routes. Security guard shift changes. And camera blind spots. This was our work. Turning a foreign environment into familiar terrain. That afternoon we were sitting in that cafe, 2 black coffees on the table. We looked like tourists, businessmen. Anything but 2 soldiers on a mission. Nearly 2 hours later, the target appeared. A familiar white Mercedes convertible. Lorelei. She got out, wearing a summer dress I'd never seen, and sunglasses that hid most of her face. She didn't use the main entrance but swiped a key card at a more discreet side door. It was located in a blind spot we had already identified. 15 minutes later, a black Range Rover pulled up out front. Vaughn Ashford emerged. He was tall, dressed smartly in a polo shirt and khaki pants. He also used a key card and entered through the same side door. The pieces were locking into place in my mind. Confirmed, Gideon said quietly, his eyes fixed on his binoculars. I didn't answer. I needed more than just confirmation of an affair. I needed to know why Alara was in a hospital bed. The opportunity came an hour later. A food delivery guy arrived, loaded with bags. When he was buzzed through the main door, it didn't shut immediately. It had a safety delay, a 3-second delay. I looked at Gideon. He nodded. We crossed the street, unhurried. Just 2 men out for a walk. We reached the door just as it began to close. I caught it gently, and we slipped inside. Not a sound. We took the stairs to the third floor, apartment 3B. I put my ear to the door. Silence. Gideon took out a small toolkit. In less than 10 seconds, the lock gave a soft click. We stepped inside and closed the door behind us. The apartment smelled of Lorelei's perfume, mixed with a man's cologne. Everything was clean, modern, and impersonal. We moved fast. Gideon checked the living room. I went to the bedroom. On the nightstand, on the side that was clearly Lorelei's, there it was. An orange prescription bottle. The label was clear. Zolpidem. Prescribed to Lorelei Prescott. The bottle was nearly half empty. It sat there, cold and obvious. The answer to Dr. Evans's question. I went back to the living room. Gideon was standing in front of an open laptop on the desk. He didn't touch it, just pointed at the screen. The browser history, recent searches. Zolpidem onset time, Zolpidem unconscious dose, PTSD, symptoms in Navy SEALs, divorce proceedings for incapacitated spouse, and finally, a phrase that made my blood run cold. SGLI life insurance payout time. SGLI. $400,000. Gideon looked at me. Kitchen trash can. There's a crumpled up draft of an insurance claim form. It was all clear. This wasn't just an affair. It was a conspiracy. They didn't just want to get rid of me. They wanted to frame me for abusing my own daughter, get me locked away in prison or a psych ward, and then cash in my life insurance. Ilara wasn't the victim of a mugging. She was a pawn in their plan. The rage inside me wasn't cold anymore. It was a solid, heavy block of ice. We're leaving, I said. We left without a trace. We had what we needed. Not evidence for a court. The truth. Now it was time to figure out how to bring that truth into the light, legally. The truth was a heavy weight. I carried it back to the hospital. The smell of antiseptic seemed even stronger now. I sat by Ilara's bed, holding her hand. Her skin was still cool to the touch. For hours, I just sat there, watching the steady rhythm of her breathing on the monitor. Each beep was a reminder that she was still here, still fighting. Gideon had gone home to rest and dig deeper into Von Ashford, but I couldn't leave. Late in the afternoon, Ilara's fingers twitched in mine, then her eyelids fluttered. She slowly opened them, squinting against the light. It took a few seconds for her to place her surroundings. Her gaze landed on me. Dad. Her voice was a hoarse, weak whisper. I'm here, baby, I said, fighting to keep my own voice steady. I'm right here. She tried to sit up, then winced in pain. I supported her shoulders. Just lie still. You're in the hospital. You're safe. She looked around the room, confusion plain on her face. What happened? A nurse came in, checking her vitals. Dr. Evans followed soon after. They asked her basic questions. What's your name? Do you know where you are? What's today's date? Ilara answered weakly but correctly. After they left, I pulled my chair closer. Ilara, can you remember what happened before you came here? Her eyes avoided mine. She stared at the white bedsheet. I'm not sure. It's all fuzzy. I knew she was scared. I needed her to know she wasn't alone. Ilara, I need you to tell me the truth. Whatever it is, you are not in any trouble. I promise. Tears began to well in her eyes. Is Mom here? No. It's just you and me. That was what she needed to hear. Her defenses crumbled. Mom said. She said you'd be angry. She sobbed. I squeezed her hand tighter. I could never be angry at you. Tell me. And then, piece by piece, the story came out. Mom and Mr. Vaughn. They said you were sick from being a soldier, that you were dangerous. Each word was a knife twisting inside me. They wanted me to tell people that you hit me. They said it was the only way to help you, to get you into a hospital. And you said no? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Alara shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. I told her I would tell you everything. I couldn't lie about you like that. She took a shaky breath. That night, Mom gave me some tea. She said it would help me calm down. I drank it, and then I don't remember anything else. That was it. The final piece. The gut-wrenching confession from my own daughter. Lorelei hadn't just betrayed me. She had poisoned her own child, used her as a tool. I pulled Alara into my arms, letting her cry on my shoulder. The rage inside me now had a name and a face, and it had a clear objective. You did the right thing, Alara, I whispered into her hair. You were so brave. Now let me handle the rest. The next morning I called a meeting, not in a tactical operations center, but in my sister's law office. Rowan Prescott was my polar opposite. She fought in courtrooms, not on battlefields. Her weapons were statutes and precedents, and she wielded them with lethal precision. Gideon sat in one corner, his laptop open. Chief Beckett sat across from me, his notebook on the table. I had told them everything the night before, every detail, including Alara's story. All right, Rowan began, steepling her fingers on the polished wood desk. What do we have? Legally. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Gideon. On Vaughn Ashford, Gideon reported. He was a ghost until 4 years ago. Real name is Victor Ashford. Prior conviction for fraud in Arizona. Specializes in targeting military families with deployed service members. Finds spouses who feel neglected or are having financial trouble. A vulture, Beckett grumbled. On the financials, Gideon continued. Lorelei's payments to Pacific Holdings Group are a direct match for the lease on the La Jolla condo. It's clean. We can use it. Rowan nodded, her expression thoughtful. Alara's testimony is the heart of this, but it will be a child's word against her mother's. They'll try to say she was confused, or that you coerced her. So what do we do? I asked. We build a wall of evidence around her testimony, Rowan answered, her eyes lighting up. A wall so high they can't climb over it. She laid out the plan, step by step, with clean, logical precision. First, Beckett, she said. I need you to take Alara's official statement. It has to be with a child psychologist present to ensure it's admissible and non-coercive. That statement will be the foundation for the warrants. Beckett nodded. Understood. Second, Rowan looked at me. You need to go to the JAG office. Now. Inform them of the situation. Request an official copy of your SGLI policy status. You need to prove the policy is active, and Lorelei is the beneficiary. And change it, I said. Not yet. Rowan interrupted. Leave it. It's part of the motive. We'll change it later. For now, freeze all joint accounts. Immediately. Cut off her money. Gideon, she said. Vaughn's entire fraud history that you found. Send it to Beckett. Beckett, you can use that to get a surveillance warrant. We're still a little thin for a search warrant on the condo, Beckett said. Alara's statement is a good start, but then we'll give them more, I said. All eyes turned to me. Lorelei thinks I'm still in the dark, I explained. She thinks I'm a tired, grieving, confused soldier. I'm going to keep playing that part. I'm going home. I'm going to let her comfort me. And I'm going to be wearing a wire. Rowan frowned. Sterling, that's risky. California is a two-party consent state for recordings. I know the law, I replied, my voice cold. But I don't need the recording to be evidence in court. I need it to force Beckett's hand. A recording of Lorelei admitting to knowing Vaughn, to the apartment. It will give Beckett the probable cause he needs to get the search warrant. And what he finds in that legal search, that's what we'll use. A silence settled over the room. Rowan looked at me, then at Beckett. Finally, she gave a slow, deliberate nod. All right. But be damn careful. She's more dangerous than you think. I knew. But so was I. The board was set. It was time to move the pieces. I went home in the evening. The house was eerily quiet. Everything was in its place. But it felt different. It was no longer a sanctuary. It was a crime scene. Lorelei was in the kitchen, making pasta. The smell of garlic and basil filled the air. She turned as I walked in, a sad smile on her face. You're back. Have you eaten? No, I replied, setting my keys on the counter. The tiny digital recorder was active in my jacket pocket. I've been so worried about you, she said, coming over and wrapping her arms around my waist. And about Alara. I let her hug me. I could feel the tension in her hold. The doctors say she's going to be okay. It'll just take time. We ate dinner in silence. I played the part of the grieving husband to perfection. I told her about the hospital procedures, about my exhaustion. I gave her the weakness she was expecting. After dinner, while we were cleaning up, I started laying the trap. I just don't get it, Lorelei, I said, my voice full of feigned confusion. The police? They keep asking the strangest questions. She paused, her back still to me. Strange? How so? They were asking about Alara's friends, people she sees. They even mentioned a name, Vaughn. I saw her shoulders tense for just a fraction of a second. It was only a moment, but I saw it. Vaughn? She said, turning around, her face a perfect mask of innocence. I don't know anyone named Vaughn. They must be confused. Probably, I said, shaking my head. I probably misheard. I'm so tired. I had planted the seed. Now, I just had to wait. I went into my study, pretending to sort through paperwork. Through the cracked door, I saw her pull out her phone, quickly type and delete a message. The bait was taken. 20 minutes later, I emerged. I think I'm going to go sleep at the hospital with Alara tonight. Oh, you don't have to do that, Sterling, she said quickly. You need your rest. Stay home. It's fine. I want to be with her. I put my jacket on. Sleep well. I drove away from the house. But I didn't go to the hospital. I parked on a corner a few blocks away, where I had a clear view of our home. Gideon was in his own car on another corner. We communicated over a secure channel. It happened just as I predicted. Half an hour later, Vaughn Ashford's black Range Rover rolled to a stop at the end of the street. Lorelei slipped out of the house and hurried into his car. Beckett and his team were already in position. They're on the move, Gideon reported over the radio. Heading toward La Jolla. That was all Beckett needed. A felon suspect making contact with the victim's mother immediately after she was questioned, both heading to a suspicious location, combined with Alara's testimony. It was enough to make a judge listen. I didn't follow them. That was the police's job. My job was to go back to the hospital and establish an airtight alibi. Near midnight, my phone vibrated. It was Beckett. We got the warrant, Sterling. Search warrant for apartment 3B. Good, I replied. And arrest warrants, he added. For both of them. Conspiracy to commit child endangerment and fraud. I hung up and looked at Alara, sleeping soundly. There was no relief. Just the cold, methodical feeling of justice being served. Lorelei and Vaughn were arrested the moment they stepped out of the condo's elevator. They were completely blindsided. The smug look on Vaughn's face melted into a mask of panic. Lorelei. She just stared into space, unable to believe her game had collapsed so quickly. The subsequent search of the apartment turned up everything. The prescription bottle, the laptop with its search history, the draft of the insurance claim, the trap had sprung. Perfectly. Justice isn't a dramatic courtroom explosion like in the movies. It's a process. Slow, methodical, and it grinds everything in its path. Vaughn, or rather Victor Ashford, broke during his first interrogation. Faced with irrefutable evidence and a list of federal charges related to the SGLI policy, he took the only path left. He confessed to everything. He laid out the entire conspiracy. From approaching Lorelei and manipulating her, to the detailed plan to frame me. Of course, he blamed it all on Lorelei, painting himself as a love-struck victim. It was a cheap performance, but it was enough to get him a plea deal. Lorelei fought. She hired a good lawyer and denied everything. She wept in court, claiming she was manipulated by Vaughn and emotionally abused by me, a soldier suffering from PTSD. My sister Rowan tore that narrative to shreds. She presented the financial statements, the prescription history, and finally, the videotaped deposition Ilara gave to the child psychologist. When that tape played, the courtroom went silent. My daughter's trembling but clear voice ended every lie. Lorelei sat there, stunned. Her perfect mask finally shattered. Vaughn got 15 years. Lorelei, for her lack of cooperation and her lead role in endangering her own child, got 20. 6 months later, the San Diego morning sun was as bright as ever. I sat on my porch, a cup of hot coffee in my hands. The house felt different. I'd repainted, rearranged the furniture. It was no longer a crime scene. It was a home again. Ilara came out, holding a thick law book. She was back in school, had even joined the debate team. The psychological scars were still there. We still went to therapy together every week, but she was stronger than I ever could have imagined. She was a fighter. Like me. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sitting in the chair next to me. "Everything," I said. And nothing at all. We sat in a comfortable silence for a while, watching the quiet street. "Aunt Rowan says I have the makings of a good lawyer," Ilara said, a small smile playing on her lips. "She's right," I replied. "You've got a cool head and a heart that doesn't quit." I didn't go back to the field. I took an instructor position in Coronado, passing on what I knew to the next generation of SEALs. It was meaningful work. It let me be home. With Ilara, Gideon still came by sometimes, bringing beer and stories of new missions. Beckett got promoted. Life went on. Sometimes, I still thought about Lorelei. Not with hate, but with a kind of cold emptiness. She had everything. A family, a home, and she set it all on fire. I wasn't the one who destroyed her world. I just refused to burn with her. Ilara leaned her head on my shoulder. I put my arm around her. This was peace. This was what I had always fought to protect. And this time, I was here to hold on to it. Mission complete.